All right, guys, welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. We're going to be looking at the 2021 ACC Championship game between Pitt and Wake Forest. Spread is at 3 for the Panthers. Over-unders at 72. This one will be on ABC at 8 Eastern Time. Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte is the location for this one. Both of these offenses rank top 5, top 10 in numerous different categories, so you're going to see a lot of that. Let's go ahead and jump into each individual unit. Looking at the Pitt offense, Kenny Pickett's been elite this year for the most part. 40 touchdowns, only 7 picks, over 4,000 yards, 350 per game. He's really showcased as a prospect how much he's improved this season. He does a great job of keeping his eyes downfield. Plays with confidence, a lot of grit. Coming into the year, I felt this was a big year for Pickett, mainly as a draft prospect, but he's really helped this team get to the ACC title game. He's a Heisman contender, so it's been much more than just raising his draft stock. He's been phenomenal this year. He's got a great group of receivers. Jordan Addison's the headliner, 17 touchdowns. You knew how talented he was coming into the year. You figured that him and Pickett were both going to have big seasons, but to have this big of a season from each guy, it's been very impressive. 1,300 yards, 17 scores for Addison. Tazir Mack's going to get involved. Some Jared Wayne, Lucas Kroll, a variety of different guys he's going to throw it to. Addison is the headliner, though, finalist for the Blitnikoff Award. They all play pretty vital roles in this, top-notch passing attack. Vincent Davis and then Israel, they're going to split touches as runners. 4.1 yards per carry, pretty modest. The running game, it's a part of their offense. It's adequate enough. Give them some solid balance. It's not overwhelming by any means. I think they have good size on their offensive line, much better than Wake Forest does. But, it's not anything eye-shattering by any means. They get the job done when they need them to. They did have under 100 yards against North Carolina. Even if this offense goes one-dimensional, I have plenty of confidence in Pickett in this passing game to take over. But they do have a phenomenal matchup against the Wake Forest defense, so maybe they'll look to get churning on the ground early and often. Looking at the Wake Forest offense, they average 43 points per game. Both of these teams are 3rd and 4th in scoring offense. Wake's 4th, Pitt is 3rd. These guys score a lot of points. Sam Hartman on the other end, he's having a great year himself. 40 total touchdowns for him. He does a lot with his legs. He does a lot with his legs. He, shines with his arm, of course, over 300 yards per game, 34 touchdowns. He's had 10 picks, so turnovers at times have been an issue, but they do have one of the nation's best downfield passing attacks in Jaquil Robertson and A.T. Perry. These guys are great. They've both had phenomenal seasons. They have a multitude of other guys that get involved as well, but those two are going to be the ones who carry the load. They struggled against Clemson up front to run or even pass protect, but for the most part, they average 167 yards per game. Christian Beal-Smith, I've not been able to find an injury update on him, but it didn't look good against UNC when he went down, and then the last 2 games he hasn't played, so I'm just going to assume he's not playing. Can't find an injury report anywhere. Maybe someone could leave that in the comments with his status. But regardless, only thing they're really losing is another fresh back. They have 2 guys in Justice Ellison and Christian Turner. They're plenty capable, and they've had a variety of success this season, so not too worried about the running back room. The offensive line, they've been pretty solid. I think they've been a tad bit better than Pitt, despite the size disadvantage. Hartman, though, great improviser when things break down. These guys are phenomenal at converting a multitude of different situations. They're, 3rd and shorts, 3rd and longs. Plenty of confidence in this Wake Forest offense to be able to convert them and Pittsburgh. Really can't ask for much more with the offenses they have. Looking at the Pitt defense, I think they kind of have an edge in this game. One of the big reasons why is their front 7. They're ranked 2nd in college football in sacks. Baldonado and Kalijah Cansey, they're a physical defensive line duo. These guys are great. They both have double-figure tackle for losses on the year. Coming off the edge, they have a nice linebacking duo as well. Cam Bright, Phil Campbell, Servassier Dennis. It's not even a duo. It's really just a trio of different guys that get involved. It's a typical Narduzzi defense up front. They get into the backfield very well. Rushing the passer is not an issue. They have great players in the interior coming off the edge as well. The biggest problem for them, though, is their secondary has struggled all year long. A lot of youth came into the year. They had to replace 2 great safeties, Devon Hamlin and Paris Ford. They only have 1 senior in the back end, Damari Mathis. Other than that, it's very youthful, but they've struggled a lot downfield. They give up a lot of lengthy passes. It's kind of been the theme all year. They're outside the top 100 in pass defense. Now they're playing a phenomenal Wake Forest passing attack. It's really going to be it's almost certain they're going to get exposed here in this game. They're usually pretty stout under Pat Narduzzi in the secondary, but again, all that youth coming in, it's been an issue for them. They get after the run pretty well, though. It's still a focal point of their defense. They're 5th nationally against the run, only giving up 2.8 yards per carry. They're very physical in their front seven. That hasn't changed. They put a lot of players in the NFL last year on their defense, all different spots of it, really. So for them to continue to be this dominant up front, it's kind of impressive. That's a big edge for them, though, coming in. Wake Forest, they struggled all year against the run. We just talked about how Pitt is not very good against the pass. These guys are not very good against the run on the ground. They allowed 330-plus yards in 2 of the last 4 games. They're one of the nation's worst in 10-plus yards. 10-plus yard runs allowed. Roydale Boythroyd, though, he's a stud. They got 2 linebackers in Luke Masterson, Ryan Smenda. These guys are ball players. I like how they play the game. They can get after it. But altogether, penetration is not very ideal, despite that nice rotation they have on the defensive line. Slowing down the run has been a big issue for them. Their secondary, they struggle a little bit underneath, but they don't give up a lot of big plays downfield. Just Sarah Taylor, he's probably their best cover man. Carlson's played very well. Nick Anderson at safety. They have some ball players. They give up 30 points per game on average, but they have a pretty solid back end. I don't know what they're going to do in this game. You can't sacrifice your downfield coverage to protect the underneath routes. So they're going to have to play. I think they're going to have to play tighter coverage, and they're just going to have to try and live with it. They're going to have to be better all around because underneath has been a big issue. Downfield hasn't, but they got to figure out a way to get underneath because they have playmakers like Mack and Addison that will make you pay on those shorter to intermediate routes. Wake Forest, they don't really have an outside presence on the edge as a pass rusher. Boythroyd, he's really their go-to guy on the interior there. So that's another thing to watch, and that's a big difference compared to the Pitt defense. They have playmakers for days on their front seven. And I just mentioned a few the Demon Deacons had as well, but they're not really comparable in who's more successful. And their performance against the run all year long has kind of been a nice indicator. Yeah, team comparisons, everything's really kind of even. I gave Wake Forest a small edge at running back. I like their duo just a little bit more than Pitt's. I mean, you can really put that as even as well. But yeah, everything on offense is kind of even. Both quarterbacks have been phenomenal this year. They both have great pass catchers, and the offensive lines have they've had their inconsistencies, but neither is really head and shoulders above the other. I do think Pitt has a nice edge at linebacker and defensive line. Wake Forest, I just gave their linebackers props. They have 2 good ones as well. But in terms of overall playmaking, it's not really close, especially with how they play against the run. Wake is pretty, flat out terrible against the run, and Pitt is phenomenal against it. So, but Wake, they have the edge in the secondary. They've been pretty solid in coverage this year. We just talked about it a minute ago. So, Nick Anderson, Jasir Taylor, the guys they have, I like them more than the Pitt secondary. It's really struggled to contain the downfield passes all year long. Keys to the game, Wake Forest, I think they need to limit the explosive plays, especially on the ground. That's been an issue. I think if Pitt starts to get some balance going, that's going to be a bad day for the Demon Deacons. For Pitt, though, they need to disrupt, get Hartman out of the pocket. He's very good out of the pocket, but I'd rather have him running around than sitting there picking our secondary apart. It's really struggled this year. Seems like a bad matchup for them. They're plenty capable of doing so. So rattle them up a bit, bottle them around, be physical. I think Pitt's going to win this game 40-34. I just like their front seven to make far more plays than Wake Forest's defense will. I think they're going to be up for the challenge of slowing them down just a tad bit. So that's going to be the key for Pitt. It's going to be a great game. I think the Panthers are going to pull this one out. It should be close, though. It's going to be a back-and-forth shootout altogether. Whoever can get more stops is really going to dictate how this game goes. I think Pitt will do that, and they will be the ACC champions.